All right, welcome everyone to the Summer Reading Book Party for Adults. This is our last one in the series. It's been awesome seeing all the different books from kids and teens to picture books to now adults. We're very excited to have you this evening. Again, we are recording and this will be posted online so you all can enjoy it afterwards, share it with whoever wasn't able to make it. And we will send you a list of the books afterwards so you can sit back and enjoy hearing about the books and not frantically keep track like I'm going to be placing holds on my side. You can enjoy that list afterwards as well. We're very excited to have you. Just to let you know, after this one, we will be taking a little break in July for book parties, but we will be back in August with more amazing book titles. We do have some events in the meantime. We have 2 author visits that will happen before then, and I will send that information in email and remind you at the end as well. But let's go ahead and introduce ourselves. So I'll start. I am Lauren. I'm one of the teen librarians, and I'll be your host this evening. So if you need anything, any troubleshooting, please write in the Q&A or chat. And we will go alphabetical order first name, starting with Alice.
Hi, I'm Alice Kober, and I'm lucky enough to buy adult fiction for the district.
Hi, my name's Allison Cochran, and I'm an adult advisory librarian.
My name is Charles, pronouns are he and his, and I am the reference librarian at a couple of branches around the district.
I'm Julia Schmidt, and I'm a library specialist at the Castlewood branch.
Lauren, are we skipping you?
Yes, I will.
I'm Rita Valenzuela, and I'm the Spanish language librarian, and I work throughout our district.
And I'm Pamela Halloran, an adult advisory librarian. And let's start talking about books, Lauren.
Let's do this, yeah.
Hi, this is Alice, and the book I'm going to talk about first is called Mary Jane. It's by Jessica Anya Blau, and it's a story about a 14-year-old girl named Mary Jane Dillard, and she lives in a narrow world in Baltimore in the 1970s. Her life consists of cooking with her mother, singing in the church choir, attending a private school, and having dinners at an all-white country club. Her narrow world widens dramatically when she takes a summer job as a nanny for 5-year-old Izzy Cohn. Izzy's family is the opposite of Mary Jane's. The Cohns are blunt, messy, loud, affectionate. Mrs. Cohn doesn't even wear a bra. Mary Jane's world blows wide open when she meets the Cohn's summer house guest, a famous rock star named Jimmy and his Hollywood actress wife, Sheba. Jimmy the rock star is secretly being treated for heroin addiction by Izzy's father, who's a well-known psychiatrist. And Sheba and Jimmy are staying at the house and they don't want anybody to know they're there. Mary Jane is delighted when she's allowed to sing with Jimmy and Sheba around the house. She doesn't tell her parents anything about what life is like at the Cohens because she knows they'd make her quit her job. But can Mary Jane keep her secret and continue to learn more about life outside the narrow confines of her family? It's an enjoyable coming-of-age story and a fun summer read. Some people, I read some reviews by people who found the plot a little too implausible, but I thought it was a fun book, and overall it's an upbeat book.
Okay, Our Woman in Moscow by Beatrice Williams is historical fiction. It is completely fictional, but it is based on the Cambridge spy ring scandal in England. There's twin sisters who are very close, but then they lose touch when one of the sisters disappears to the Soviet Union with her husband and children in the late 1940s. Many years later, the sister still in England gets a postcard from her sister with a cryptic message. Should she go to the Soviet Union to try to see what's up with her sister, to try to get her out? Can she even achieve that? And you just spend the whole time trying to figure out who's a Russian spy, who's an English spy, who's the double agents, and are they all double agents? And of course, you know the Americans are up to something there. You add in the drama between the sisters, and you've got quite the page-turning story.
My first title is Dark Archives by Megan Rosenblum. This is a nonfiction title. Megan Rosenblum is a librarian at the UCLA Library, and on a visit to the Mutter Museum at the College of Physicians in Philadelphia, she stumbled across several pieces of work that were bound in human skin, also known as anthropodermic bibliopatry. This made her dive down a rabbit hole and find several works bound in human skin. These were mostly done by doctors or physicians during the Civil War and early 20th century. A lot of these are held in private collections throughout the world. She even got a tour of several private collections in Central Europe where people had familial collections of books bound in human skin. They ended up doing several tests to find out which items, if she got permission to find out if they were actually bound in human skin or something else. This is a very interesting book, and I would recommend it to fans of true crimes and unique nonfiction storytelling.
Okay, I'm going to talk about The Secret Bridesmaid by Katie Birchall. And this is a romantic fiction book that centers around Sophie, who is a professional bridesmaid. She not only gets stuff done at all the weddings she's hired for, but she also seamlessly plays the part of long-lost friend of the bride versus that of trained professional. When she's hired to be part of the celebrity wedding of the year, she finds herself confronted with a difficult bride, a swoon-worthy brother, and another elite wedding happening on the very same day. This book felt like a bunch of amazing rom-coms all kind of hung out together. You have a little bit of the wedding planner mixed with the countryside of the holiday and a little Notting Hill romance mixed in. This book has minimal steam, which can be a pro or a con depending on what kind of romance reader you are. A great emphasis on female friendships, endearing familial bonds, and a fun look at the total boss mode of Sophie. The behind-the-scenes moments of Wedding Planner are also super funny, and I loved the email exchanges between Sophie and the vendors. I had myself laughing out loud for several of the parts. I highly recommend this book if you're in the mood for a lighthearted romance set in London and the English countryside. It's a feel-good beach read. That's The Secret Bridesmaid.
I also want to chat up some romance. So this is Written in the Stars by Alexandria Bellefleur. This is an adult work of fiction, contemporary romance. And I have to say, after a long winter, it's time to warm up with some sunny romance. And Bellefleur's delightful romantic harmony is just the thing. Darcy is an awkward, standoffish type who gets set up with her brother's business partner, the whimsical and internet-famous astrologer Elle Jones. After a less than stellar date, Darcy ends up striking a deal with Elle, hoping to keep her nosy family happy. It has it all: odd couples, fake dating, astrology, and a heart-stopping moment on New Year's Eve. Sign me up. This is the perfect book for a summer at the park.
I'm smiling. That sounds great, Marina. Jennifer Weiner's That Summer is the first book I'll talk about. So this popular author has another book ready to read this summer, but in spite of the title and the mostly Cape Cod setting, it's really not a beachy read. It's not as light maybe or romantic as Marina and Julia's books. Weiner is so good at creating characters that you get to know, and you just really need to find out what happens with them, what is going on. I could not put it down. So in this one, housewife Daisy receives an email from Diana, which was meant for someone with a very similar email address. And when Daisy replies to Diana to explain this, the two strike up an email friendship and then actually meet. Daisy is a lonely housewife and mother who's just taking care of her family, and Diana quickly becomes her friend. But was this really a misdirected email, or does Diana have a more complicated reason to contact Daisy? That Summer by Jennifer Weiner.
that was Alice the mute speaking. My next book is The Good Sister by Sally Hepworth. And this is one of my favorite books I've read in quite a while. It reminded me somewhat of Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. Eleanor was on the spectrum, autism spectrum, and so is the main character, Fern Castle, in this book. Yeah, you asked, I'm not seeing the image right now. But anyway, it's The Good Sister by Sally Hepworth. And Fern Castle is in her 30s. She works at her local library. She has a very regular routine for getting up, arriving at the library, working at the desk, and ignoring patrons who want her to help them with the printers. Fern copes pretty well with her sensory processing issues. She has those as well as being on the spectrum. So she avoids crowds, bright lights, and loud noises as much as possible. She also relies heavily on her twin sister. And she has dinner with her twin sister, Rose, 3 nights a week. And whenever Fern feels overwhelmed, she calls Rose, and Rose tries to respond immediately. But Rose emphasizes that Fern needs to be careful about following her routine, or something very bad could happen. Fern says, "There's only one time that Rose couldn't stop me from doing the wrong thing, and that was a mistake that will haunt me for the rest of my life." But most of the time, Fern's kind of an upbeat character, and I enjoy her very much. When Fern learns that Rose cannot become pregnant, Fern sees her chance to pay her sister back and have a baby for her. So Fern will have the baby, but she needs to find a father. And that search is a very interesting process. I love this book, and I wish Fern could be a friend I could work with at our district. And again, that's The Good Sister by Sally Hepworth.
Okay, I'm going to talk about The Gunkle by Stephen Rowley. Oh, how I loved this book. Gunkle stands for Gay Uncle, and you can see on the cover we have Gay Uncle Patrick. He's a former actor on a very successful sitcom, so he made his money, and then when his partner dies and the sitcom has ended, he just retreats to Palm Springs and just kind of cuts himself off from life. But then his sister-in-law dies, and his brother is unable to care for the children right away on his own because he has addiction problems. And so the children are sent to Uncle Patrick for 3 months. So there's a lot to this book of hard stuff because he's still grieving the loss of his partner, that he's lost his sister-in-law, the kids have lost their mom. But while you might cry during this book, you will smile and laugh on every single page. There's so much humor and love, and the kids and Uncle Patrick just really heal each other. It just hit the sweet part for me about a book about grief and recovery, but so filled with love and fun.
The next book is A Freedom Found by Warren Miller. This is also nonfiction. This is a great story by the late, great, legendary filmmaker Warren Miller, talking about his youth growing up in Southern California with his parents as they moved around from job to job during the post-Great Depression era. As Miller got older, he found odd jobs to pay for his simple yet adventurous lifestyle: skateboards, surfboards, and finally skis. Later, we hear tales that you can only imagine from someone like Warren Miller, shooting a film on the side of a volcano in between eruptions, shooting in between terrible storms and makeshift setups, different camera crews, and the like. Always loved his signature line, don't take life too seriously because you can't come out alive. And he did live by these words. For someone who enjoys skiing adventures, this is the greatest storyteller of from the ski industry. The book had matched much of his life to the book for people who enjoy humorous and action-packed memoirs.
This is The Magic Fish by Trung Le Nguyen. This is a young adult title, but I really want to recommend it because I think it's truly all ages. It is a graphic novel as well. And I think the first thing that you'll be struck by when you open it up is just how beautiful and delicate the illustrations are, which really reflect how beautiful and delicate the story is. In brief, it's about a little boy who's struggling to tell his mother about his crush on a schoolmate, which wouldn't be a problem except his schoolmate is another little boy. This graphic novel takes on topics as wide-ranging as forced immigration, homophobia, and difficult family conversations, all in a very light, whimsical, and touching style. Together, mother and son tell each other fairy tales throughout the story, and through the telling arrive at a new understanding of each other. Fair warning, you might get a bit teary, but in the end, they will be happy tears.
His Only Wife by Peace Meady. Summer is the season of weddings. Oh, I want to back up just a minute. The author is an advocate for women's rights, and this is her debut book. So anyway, summer is the season of weddings, especially this year as we can finally get together in person again. There are lots of weddings, and this book starts with a wedding. Fee is a young seamstress whose life is very constrained. She lives with her widowed mother in a small town in Ghana. But one day she receives a wedding proposal from a wealthy family. But Eli, the groom, sends a stand-in to the wedding. She doesn't actually meet her groom until he comes to their apartment in Accra, finally, a couple of weeks after she's moved in there as his wife. It turns out he's living with another woman who his family does not accept, and Afi is supposed to entice him away and back to the approved marriage. In the meantime, Afi is finding her place in the big city, where there's lots of opportunities for her that she did not have in her small town. It's a compelling story of marriage and family and expectations of another culture, but perhaps that we would all find some truth as we read about Afi and her journey.
My next book is That Dish at Gracie's Cafe by Kaylin Worth. You can see it's set in Darkwater Creek in 1930. The author has written some other books set in Darkwater Creek. She also has written a book called The Not So Quiet Life of Calamity Jane, which is set in the Old West, and I thought that was also a wonderful book. That Dish at Gracie's Cafe is set in the heart of the Depression, and it's a few months after the stock market crash of 1929. The author describes the book as being about bootleggers, betrayal, and barbecue. Gracie is the main character, and she and her husband, Paul, run a cafe, and they make bootleg elderberry wine, and they hope they can make enough to keep their farm. However, Paul's been keeping secrets from Gracie because she's pregnant, and he wants to protect her, and she doesn't know how close they are to losing everything. I found the opening of the book was kind of depressing, and I had kind of like, uh-oh, bummer alert, but things get better. There's some magic realism, which I enjoy, and there's also some inspirational messages, nothing heavy-handed, but I really enjoyed it. The writing is lyrical and poetic. For example, when Gracie is cooking on a barbecue grill, it says, like the coals, Gracie's hurts faded from red to black to gray, and as they died, they offered wisps of smoke that calmed her. All of the characters in the small town are memorable, flawed, and believable. And ultimately, the core of the story is the struggle of Gracie and her husband to find their way through the Depression and back into a strong, loving relationship. It's not a sad story, but instead deals with finding hope in a seemingly impossible situation. I really recommend this.
Raceless by Georgina Lawton is a memoir. Lawton is a young British woman. She was raised in a predominantly white neighborhood by white parents with a white brother, but she very clearly was mixed race. This is the stunning story of how her family just denied or ignored that there might be something more to this story. If this was a fiction book, you'd say that this is not very believable, but it's the true story. One thing I loved is her parents are wonderful, supportive people. There's this one issue, but this is not like oh, how horrible were my parents or something. As soon as she is 18, she gets DNA testing done and finds out her father is not her actual father and is shocked. You as the reader are not shocked at all by this. And then later she gets the full ancestry type testing and finds out she's half Nigerian. Her mother still denies that she is mixed race. And so half of this book is about her story and her search for identity and what does it mean to be Black if she's always been told she isn't. But then she also does a lot of traveling, and she discusses in the rest of the book Black identity, DNA testing, and the issues facing all mixed race people. The audiobook is narrated by the author, and it's fabulous.
My last title is Ready Player 2 by Ernest Cline. This is a fiction and sci-fi title. Cline is back with his follow-up to his classic novel, Ready Player 1. It has been several years since Wade Watts won the James Halliday hunt and found all of the Easter eggs embedded in the Oasis. This was not the only surprise Halliday left behind. He left new technological advances in his gaming system, and they may not all be great upgrades. Follow Wade as he tries to undo the mistakes that he was baited into. Can he survive and keep millions of people logged into the Oasis alive and from their death, and salvage the gaming system they all desperately love all at the same time? This is for anyone who loves the 1980s and sci-fi fans. Highly recommend.
So you may have seen on the news, the Israeli-Palestine conflict is back on the world stage and has never really left, really. So in Salt Houses, and this is an adult fiction title by Hala Alian. She weaves the story of a Palestinian family across 4 generations, from the Six-Day War to the almost present. During the course of the story, borders shift, homes vanish, lives are upturned in ways no one could foresee, and across the generations we see the collective yearning of the exile to make a home, to fight for a home, and to return home. Whatever side your sympathies lie with, there is no doubt that this book will make your heart ache.
Excuse me, Running with Sherman is a nonfiction book by Christopher McDougall. The author and his family moved to rural Pennsylvania in order to be able to have more land and more animals. Christopher quickly met Sherman, a severely neglected donkey, and he took him in. After Sherman began to physically mend, the author realized that Sherman needed a job, and he registered him in the burro race in Leadville, Colorado. You will learn lots about the personalities and quirky traits of very endearing donkeys. And you too can actually attend the burro race in Colorado this summer. There are several. The race in Leadville is always on the first weekend in August, if you'd like to take that in and meet some of these really cool animals and their owners yourself. One of my book clubs discussed it, and we really had a lot of fun. So I recommend this, Running with Sherman.
This is Alice again, and my last book is The First Day of Spring by Nancy Tucker. I would describe this book as dark and suspenseful. It's a lot darker than things I normally read and enjoy, but I like this book. The opening will tell you whether it's something that would appeal to you. Quote, I killed a little boy today, held my hands around his throat, felt his blood pump hard against my thumbs. He wriggled and kicked. I roared. I squeezed. That is 8-year-old Chrissy speaking. She's had a very difficult life. Her father's rarely home. Her mother openly dislikes her and rarely feeds her. So Chrissy's starving both for food and for any kind of affection. Then fast forward 20 years, Chrissy is now 28 and goes by the name Julia. She has a 5-year-old daughter and constantly worries whether she can be a good parent based on how her mother treated her and then also the things she's done. She fears that social workers will take her daughter away from her. The book alternates between Chrissy's and Julia's viewpoints and each move forward in time, and they build tension relentlessly. Ultimately, the author asks, can society forgive the unforgivable? Does everyone deserve a second chance? I thought it was very compelling, very interesting book.
Okay, The 100 Years of Lenny and Margot by Marianne Kroner. Okay, heads up, you're going to cry when you read this. It is a tearjerker, but you're going to smile and laugh, maybe even more. Lenny is a 17-year-old with very serious cancer, and Margot is an 83-year-old with a myriad health issues, and they meet up in a long-term care hospital in Glasgow, Scotland. Someone has started an art class for teens and one for senior residents, but Lenny doesn't like any of the other teenagers, so she goes to the senior class, and that's where she meets Margot, and they strike up an amazing friendship. They start drawing pictures and telling stories of their life, and that's how we get their whole backstory, is through these stories. And they come up with the idea that between them, they've lived 100 years, and they should try to document that with their artwork. I know it sounds kind of maudlin, but the character development is amazing. Lenny is hilarious, snarky teen. Margot has led an unusual life for an 80-year-old woman from Scotland. And some of the other characters, like the relationship between Lenny and the hospital chaplain, are hilarious. She likes to show up at the chapel and tell him, you're not very popular here. You should do something to bring in more crowds. And he's trying to tell her, you know, that's not how hospitals chaplains work. So get out your hankies for the sad parts, but then definitely read this book.
Okay, my last book is Infinite Country by Patricia Engel. This is an amazing own voices adult fiction read about the experience of a Colombian-born family seeking opportunity, financial security, and a future in the US. The author, Patricia Engel, is both the daughter of Colombian immigrants and a dual citizen, which really helped to aid in painting a more realistic picture for the characters. After Elena and Mauro give birth to their first daughter, they decide to move to the US. They travel to Houston and send wages back to Cuba to their family. They then continue to move again and again, all the while their family continues to grow and their undocumented status threatens the life they've built in the US. I greatly appreciated this book's insights into why many feel they have no choice but to travel to the US, despite the love of their home country, potential family separation, and overall fears. The realities of mixed status families was also very eye-opening and really impactful for me. This book was engaging and heartbreaking, and it's also a quick read at 191 pages. I highly recommend this book, especially to those potentially dipping their toes into literary fiction who would like a narrative about immigration that is own voices.
I'm putting that on my list right now, Julia. Thank you. We are watching Eliza Bright by A.E. Osworth. Is an adult fiction title. And for those of you who remember the Gamergate controversy of 2014, this kaleidoscope of a novel will bring it all back. Eliza is a young woman making her way up the chaotic career ladder of Silicon Valley gaming companies, and she decides to push back against the toxic work culture that surrounds her, with, unfortunately, horrific results. Osworth uses some unique narrative stylings to create a sense of collective danger that is as real as it is uncomfortable. This is a social thriller that pairs well with Coders by Clive Thompson and Crash Override by Zoe Quinn.
Oh, Star of the North by D.B. John. I had to include a thriller. I know there are a lot of thriller readers out there. And for thriller fans, this one is really exciting. The main story follows Jenna, whose sister was kidnapped in South Korea 12 years before. There's new evidence that she may still be being held in North Korea, in the north. Jenna will do anything, include trying to sneak into North Korea to find her sister. There are two other intertwined stories. A poor woman in North Korea finds a US aid balloon and illegally takes the contents. And a high-ranking North Korean official discovers his ancestor may have been a traitor to the state, which would mean death to him if the authorities find out. There are surprising connections with all these stories, and the ending is a thrill, just as it should be. Star of the North.
Okay, this is The Chosen and the Beautiful by Naivo. This is a Great Gatsby retelling that is just getting so much great reviews and hype right now. And the plot sticks very closely to The Great Gatsby, but the characters are different. This book focuses on the Jordan Baker character, Daisy's golf pro friend, but in this case, Jordan is an LGBT Asian American. And some of the other characters' backstories are a little tweaked also. It actually, keeping the same plot but changing the characters, made the whole plot make much more sense to me, and I loved it so much more. So if you are a fan of The Great Gatsby, you absolutely need to read this book. And if you're not, you should still read it because now it makes sense. Loved it.
All right, I wanted to end my recommendations on a sweet note. So this is another romance. This is, I think, technically a young adult, but it works for adult readers too. So this is a contemporary romance by Casey McQuiston called One Last Stop. You might remember this author. She also wrote the novel Red, White, and Royal Blue, and which is also a delight, and I also recommend. So this story is a story of a magical meeting between August, who is a 20-something feeling adrift in New York City, and Jane, the mysterious punk rocker that appears on the subway. After Jane helps August out of a tight spot, a crush starts to grow between the two women. But Jane has a problem, one that might make August have to choose between her new love and her life as she knows it. Get ready for a romantic comedy full of heart, laughs, and just a little bit of time travel.
Oh, okay. I guess I finish up with Why We Swim. Summer, of course, is a perfect time to read a book about swimming. The author loves to swim and regularly does so in San Francisco Bay, the cold, chilly San Francisco Bay. She's written a short and interesting book about why many of us also like to swim, even though we're not natural swimmers. We are not fish, after all. She writes about how good it is for us, and she includes stories of interesting swims and swimmers, Olympic medalists, near drownings, people that did not drown and perhaps should have. Why didn't they? Her conversational tone is very engaging. As I said, it's a short book. Even though I don't like to get in the water, her descriptions of getting into the swimming zone, which has never happened to me, that prompted me to sign up at my local rec center. So maybe I can find the swimming zone too. By the way, we also had Allison and I had a great book club discussion of this book. I mean, after all, everyone has something to say about swimming.
Allison, you muted? Okay.
Allison, you're
I
muted.
know. Okay. The Anatomy of Desire by L.R. Dawn. This is like a true crime podcast, except it's not true crime, it's fictional, and it's not a podcast, it's a book. It is loosely based on Theodore Dreiser's An American Tragedy. Chuck, stop laughing at me. But this time it's focused on a social media influencer. Cleo's a fitness blogger and an Instagram star. And then she and her girlfriend Beck go boating and Beck dies. Is Cleo guilty? What's going on? And she does get charged with the crime. The plot is not the star of this. It is told from all different voices, and you really have to do it on audiobook. It's a full cast recording, and you hear the voices of the witnesses, the prosecutors, all the different social media influencers, family members, and it's an amazing experience on audio. So that is The Anatomy of Desire.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for joining us, everyone. Those are all the titles that we have for you this evening. And I will be following up with an email with a list of all of them where you can place holds and see what formats they come in and enjoy them yourselves. And I will also include links to other events, since we will take a gap in July from a break from book party. So we'll see you back in August, and we hope you have a great time in the meantime. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining.
All right. Thank you, everyone.